introduce our second speaker tonight, Matthew Skelton. He has spoken at Agile Yorkshire numerous times in the past. There's always definitely lots of wisdom to be delivered. Please give him a super warm welcome.
Thank you, everyone. It's good to be here. I want to talk today about economies of empowerment, how to get the benefits of both speed and scale. And I try to answer this question: how can we scale without slowing down? This is a question that we get asked regularly, and it's in the minds of lots of leaders and execs. Surely we just need to make things bigger, just like bigger teams, bigger projects. The answer really is this: we need to empower teams around smaller things and actively curate sharing. I'll go into all of the details on this. So if you want to go to sleep now, you can, because that's basically the entire talk. Early value delivery, right? No, was it? More specific, the focus on empowerment actually clarifies the mission and focus up and down the organization. Just as Mike was saying before, it's a fractal thing. Fractal itself, similar, zoom in, zoom out. What value are we providing and to whom? That last question there, if it were actually written out correctly, it should say we providing, but it doesn't say on here because I've not corrected the slides yet. What value are we providing to whom? That single question there is one of the most powerful diagnostic questions that you can come across. This is what I found. Just keep asking that around the organization and people go, oh, what? Oh yeah, it's not very clear, is it? It's super, and it actually works for an individual as well. So if you're looking for a job, like really try and zoom into what the value is. And it always produces hugely beneficial insights, results. So there's lots of examples, right? So scale up reaches market fit, it gets acquired by a big corporation, but then it loses effectiveness as a big corporation takes over. Very, very common. A new service line or product within a large corporation or government department initially has success, but now must become more enterprisey. The previous funding dries up and there's a push towards operational efficiency. These are all very, very common. And often the solution is framed in terms of economies of scale versus economies of speed. Economies of scale, managing for unit cost, making lots of a thing, driving down a unit cost, which at one level is fine if you're building widgets. That's the right thing to do, or it's a reasonable thing to do. If you're talking about economies of speed, you're trying to be first to market, you're trying to move very, very quickly, and so the dynamics are different. But these are very, very far away on a landscape of kind of organizational dynamics. I don't think this binary choice is where it needs to be. We literally had two different organizations come to us, one in the Netherlands and one somewhere else. I think it was Malta or somewhere. And they literally asked this question, like, how do we navigate this apparent dichotomy between these two things? That's ultimately where partly where this talk came from. So how can organizations navigate away from a binary choice between speed and scale and instead get the benefits of both? Or not all the benefits of both, but many of the benefits of both, really. Going back to that question, what value do we provide and to whom? I updated my social media profiles the other day because I reflected on that question and said, what do I provide and to whom? So I provide levers and language for tech-savvy value delivery. So I've dog-fooded it. I've actually done that to myself, if you like. To whom do I provide it? Mostly leaders and execs these days. I've done lots of recent work, insurance group, the bank, scale up, gaming and betting, telecoms, all sorts of stuff. So the kind of stuff we're talking about today is informed by work in lots of different sectors in different parts of the world. So there, just like I said, instead of this back and forth flip-flop between operating for scale and operating for speed, organizations can get both, the best of both by economies of empowerment. Some organizations literally there'll be a period of growth when they're operating for speed, and then something will change, or they'll get a new CFO or a new CEO, and everything will flip. So they do a massive reorg. It's just incredibly ineffective. We're thinking about economies of empowerment. We're talking about operating for the agency of individuals, teams, and departments, and expecting outsized outcomes from that. This mindset is not common at all. I would say it's probably common for people who have come out of the Agile the last 30 years or what have you, for sure. Let's work out how we're going to give groups of people agency. But most organizations don't think about it in these terms. There's 4 things I want to talk about today. These are the 4 important things I think we need to get to economies of empowerment. They're not the only things we need, but I think they're 4 things which are key. And we'll go through these one by one. Infrastructure for agency in the form of team topologies. A vending machine or self-service discipline via APIs. We should treat compliance as enhancing agency via automation to empower teams. And finally, we need to use active knowledge diffusion to uplift engagement, trust, alignment, and awareness. So 4 things. What did we do before emojis? Don't know. But I'm glad we've got emojis that represent speed, scale, and empowerment. Economies of scale, it's all about cost efficiency, negotiation power, but then you'll have lots of single points of failure and lower adaptability. That's the elephant. We're expected to minimize variation, drive down costs, and we're trying to make things easy to manage. Which if we're producing widgets and the widgets remain the same forever and ever, then it might be all right. That's not how the modern world works. Economies of speed, it's a faster time to market, we get more operational agility, but we've got higher costs, regulatory complexity, and it's not a traditional way of managing things. Welcoming variation and accepting higher costs looks a bit weird to some people. That's when your new CFO comes in or COO comes in and goes, "What is this nonsense?" and flips it all back to economies of scale. So because I'm a consultant, I've got to do like a quadrant thing. So we put economies of empowerment up here. How can we get there? Let's combine elephants and speed. So we can do this. This is a joke. This is what happens out in Thailand, I think. So don't be looking for an elephant to go elephant riding. We're talking about empowered groups of people, multiple different levels of scale in the organization. So we expect to have rapid time to market, with some operational agility, responsiveness. Got to focus on outcomes. Regulation becomes a differentiator and the workplace is thriving. That's the kind of thing we're expecting to see in this part of the landscape. So we'd expect a convergence to a few solutions, but not just one. We're not driving towards a single solution, but we are driving towards a small number, because otherwise we're wasting money. We expect to have a diversity of supply and services, because we're always trying to sense what options we've got, just like Mike was saying before. Compliance doesn't become something we're scared of, it becomes something we innovate around, completely flipping it on its head. And we've got a mindset which is all around kind of API, so I mean, very technical term, right? Application programming interface, but turning that into an organizational capability. There's a book that I'll signpost later that relates to that. Oh, it's right here. Unbundling the Enterprise, Superbook. Who's seen this? If you're at all interested in this kind of stuff at the organizational level, Unbundling the Enterprise is a great book. It's from the same publisher as Team Topologies. So the subtitle is APIs, Optionality and the Science of Happy Accidents. It's how to make very large organizations extremely nimble by using the actual APIs and the logical idea of an API inside the organization. So like the legal department is providing services to other parts of the organization instead of having to do back and forth requests all the time. There's Team Topologies. Product Operations by Melissa Perry and Denise Tillis. Who's read that? Yes, we've got product. Your product in product area? Brilliant. This is awesome. This book is also awesome. Empowered by Marty Kagan is interesting, but doesn't have as much depth, I think, as it needs really to help organizations navigate this kind of space. Empowered Agile Transformation by Alex Stokes, brilliant. Lots of practical stuff about how to make transformation like with that empowered lens. There's a book that I wrote here ages ago called Internal Tech Conferences, How to Run an Internal Tech Conference. I'll explain why that's important later on. Anyway, 6 books, all of which should be really useful in this kind of space. What's needed to make this transition? I'll go through these 4 things now. The first thing is to think about, oh, by the way, sorry. There's this book here, which can go home with one of you later on, with or without a signature, as you wish. there's a QR code towards the end of the slide, and then there's going to be a tiebreaker question, correct? Tiebreaker question. So to make it fair, basically, there'll be a tiebreaker question to get the book. The first thing is that the patterns and ideas and techniques and whatnot in team topologies can be used as what we're calling the infrastructure for agency. So how do you create the conditions in the organization and the operating model, if you like, that enables agency, enables groups to be empowered? My paraphrase of the Team Topologies book is this: given the need for ongoing stewardship of long-lived services, how can we realistically arrange the flow of value to be rapid, safe, and sustainable? That's basically the entire of the book. So if you don't want to read it, just there's your sentence, right? That's what it's really talking about. So there are situations where if you're not talking about long-lived services, the ideas in here don't necessarily matter so much. That's fine. There's definitely some context where something is genuinely a project. If you're tidying up after a children's party, you don't really need to worry about how you organise and whatnot, because it's just a one-off thing, hopefully, unless you're doing children's parties every day because you're a children's party organiser, in which case you might want to think about some of the ideas in here because it's a long-lived service, effectively. In the second edition, there's 10 really great case studies from around the world where you talk about team types, team interaction modes, some ideas and clues to find good boundaries. It's predicated on long-lived stewardship of value streams and so on and so on. A bunch of ideas in there. The diagrams in the book that you'll see online, that it's all about flow of value. So the diagrams kind of go left to right. So on the right-hand side of the diagram is the value consumer, customer sometimes called, but more generally value consumer sits over there. Then on the left-hand side is we've got the idea. We've got an idea that we're going to provide some value. So that's why these diagrams look a little bit different from some other diagrams. Different flows of value. They're arriving at the customer at different times, maybe different customers. We've also got a fractal sense, like Mike was saying before, what we call a platform. I don't really like the term, but a platform anyway in blue. And inside there, you've got the same kind of flows of value. It's just that the platform is providing value to internal value consumers, typically. I think we've got a printed version of this. There's one or two printed copies on the table at the front. Case study that we did, case study about some work we did with EBSCO Information Services. They do research databases for universities and like pharma companies and things like this. Lots and lots of data. And we worked with them, and they got some really useful results by using the Team Topologies principles and ideas. And the Team Topologies ideas have been used, and techniques and practices have been used by all kinds of organizations around the world. Women's health, banking, in technology infrastructure, telecoms, all kind of places. I think it's every continent apart from Antarctica, which is kind of reasonable. How does AI, particularly agentic AI, change things here? Well, it's interesting because I'm not particularly an AI specialist. So I've put some quotations from people who are more involved in AI in here. And Tom Papercamp is one of those people. And he's saying this was last year, this is on LinkedIn, the organizations poised to win with agentic AI are not necessarily those with the most advanced models, but those whose operating models are already built for trust, clarity, and bounded autonomy. Team Topologies provides the blueprint for creating the bounded autonomy and clear interfaces that agents need to thrive. So the ideas in here, although we wrote them before, originally we wrote this stuff before agentic AI, turns out that the ideas are being applied directly into organizations that are using agentic AI. And that's, I think, because we thought quite deeply about the nature of the ideas. We come from a software delivery background, but we didn't want to connect it too tightly into software delivery. We were thinking about knowledge work and value flow and things like this. Stuart Wintertier is an AI product specialist and works with execs around the world. I'm actually very super pleased to be just literally today he dropped into our Slack. So I'll be delivering some exec workshops alongside Stuart in the coming weeks and months. Stuart last year said online, Team Topologies offers something that agentic AI desperately needs but cannot invent on its own. Clear boundaries, stable interfaces, aligned domains, a culture of collaborative ownership. So Team Topologies is the infrastructure for agency. That's where that phrase comes from, infrastructure for agency. So someone who's working at the forefront of agentic AI can recognize these patterns inside Team Topologies, which is brilliant, and which is kind of why I'm working with him, because we're bringing these two perspectives together. My point being that whether you're working with humans or whether you're working with AI of some form, particularly agentic AI, the patterns in here are really going to help set up an operating model for your organization, which is going to work for the foreseeable future. And if you want to know more, head to teamtopologies.com/scale. And there's all sorts of stuff we've got on there in terms of enterprise content licenses and academy and success toolkits and things like that. So Team Topologies is providing the infrastructure for agency and empowerment within the organization. That's like a foundational layer, if you like. Something we need to have on top of that as a discipline, the self-service discipline via APIs. One of the key phrases in the Team Topologies book is as a service. So what we call a platform is providing things as a service to other parts of the organization. That's what enables scale. Turns out there's some very different ideas about what as a service means. And in a second, I'm going to ask for a volunteer. So here's one idea of what as a service means. It's a butler, white gloves, what have you. Who's going to volunteer? Is someone going to volunteer, or do I have to pick someone? Because I know. Really, okay, maybe. Is there anyone else who's going to volunteer? We can go with Gina. I was going to pick on Andy, but we'll go with Gina. The white glove thing, in terms of as a service, it's so you've got. I'm the butler. You're not going to get embarrassed. I'm going to get embarrassed. That's the way we do it. So you've got to ask me something really bespoke and unusual, but not rude.
Okay.
Let's say it's food.
Okay. Can you please get me a leg of salmon from the Arctic Ocean?
Absolutely, Mum. Absolutely. So hand waving. So I go off, get on the boat or on the fast aeroplane or whatever, and come back, whatever it is, 17 days later. Here you are, madam. They're a little bit stale now, but there we go. Right. So that's the as a service, which we don't mean. We don't mean that kind of as a service model, right? We don't want to be asking for bespoke things which are a one-off, which take ages to procure, and which no one else is likely to want either, hopefully, ever. It's like customer requirements. It needs immediate attention. It's highly personal. It doesn't scale. That's not what we mean when we say as a service. Instead, it should be like a vending machine. There might be someone in the room who recognizes where this photo was taken. There's a clue if you're a traveler. But we'll ignore that for now. You can have that. You can try and work it out. If you know, you definitely know straight away. So now I'm a vending machine. And now you can, so here's a control panel. And you can choose something from the vending machine.
No more legs of salmon. I want some potatoes, please. Potatoes!
Right. This is in Ireland because potatoes only exist in Ireland, right? As far as I'm aware. So it's transactional. Thank you very much. Round of applause for Gina. Thank you. So the vending machine is transactional and scalable. We can even compose new products from the vending machine products, right? So you can get a bottle of water, you can get a bag of potato crisp, and you can get a Snickers bar, and you can put them in a bag, and you can sell them. I can sell a bag to you, and you'll pay like £10 for it, even though the components were less, right? But you can repackage it. And the same model works for things like data and other kind of services. Like the vending machine doesn't need to know that I'm going to repackage that stuff. That's the whole point. You don't want that dependency in there. And if there's something that's missing, like if I want salmon-flavored potato crisps, I'm not going to stand outside the vending machine waiting for those salmon-flavored potato crisps to arrive, right? I'm not going to just stand there waiting for them. I'm either going to use what's there or I'm going to go a little bit hungry, but I'm not going to stand in front of it. So we're deliberately avoiding that waiting. What we can do, though, is negotiate. We can go find the people who stock the vending machine and say, look, I got data that suggests that salmon-flavored potato crisps are the next hot thing. Can we try it? And they try it and they go, it's amazing. The data, the metrics prove it. We'll continue to stock it. That's brilliant. Now I can just consume it from the vending machine again without having to do all that custom work. And the more detailed version of all that stuff is that book I mentioned before called Unbundling the Enterprise. That's where it's really, there's some mathematics behind it and there's a bunch of other things behind it that explains why this kind of vending machine API-based model actually really, really works. And some other things too. And I think this API vending machine mindset actually empowers teams inside and outside the organization, because it allows them to innovate autonomously without having to need central control, because they can see what's in the vending machine. They can decide then and there themselves what to do without it. If they don't see something they need, they can either create it themselves, or they can deprioritize a thing that they thought they were going to build and instead build something that's available to be built based on what's in the vending machine. So rather than trying to couple a load of stuff together saying 17 teams, you all need to build this thing now so that we can do this one little widget change, just focus on the stuff that's available to build from the vending machine or the Lego stash. So I think it's genuinely empowering, but it's a discipline that many organizations don't really have. But if most of us here are coming from a kind of digital-ish, technology-ish background, probably, we're actually able to lead with this kind of mindset, so then we're bringing something which is quite powerful as an organizational capability. The third thing I want to talk about is the need to treat compliance as enhancing agency by automation to empower teams, which is not how compliance is normally talked about. This is a real photo of a bank that we worked with in Europe, and these are the compliance people here. Completely bogged down, completely stuck in the mud. The Chief Information Security Officer and the Head of Risk both wanted to use compliance as an accelerator, but all of their people were using like Word documents and this and that and like whispers about what the process was and so on, and things would literally take 6 months to get kind of through the compliance process. And it basically was crippling the bank, which is partly the reason why we're there, to help them get out of that mess. Very few rules were defined or discoverable. So every extra risk decision slowed things down further. There was no light or transparency about how they should operate. Contrast that with this. So this kayaker is going down a whitewater race course. Who's done any canoeing or kayaking here? Have you done this kind of stuff? So just imagine if you couldn't see the poles. Are you going to be able to navigate the course? Almost certainly not. The poles are very, very visible for that very good reason, because it enables you to see how to navigate it. And so making the compliance requirements extremely visible enables us to go faster, actually empowers us to navigate that course. So it's plotting the quickest route to success. Now we know that competitors are also going to be struggling. So if we can illuminate them better than our competitors, that's a really good starting point. It's not the only thing we need to do, but it's a really, really good starting point. Beyond that, the compliance requirements act as a map of business opportunities to exploit. Some of this stuff is in that book around unbundling the enterprise that I talked about before with the blue cover. Because the compliance requirements are difficult to navigate for most organizations, it actually plots as a course to say, if we can get really good at navigating this course, then we can maybe even offer to the market something that other people would want to buy. And we literally had this with a customer based not very far from this office right here, who did exactly this. Because they were more nimble than their competitors, they're able to, they built an internal solution that was to meet some compliance requirements for their regulator. But then they were able to turn it outwards and offer it as a paid service to other people. Tools like COSLI, which is in the Teams Quality Success Toolkit, turn compliance from a bottleneck into a competitive advantage. So this is literally a thing that people pay for. Big financial institutions in particular, but pharma and other places too, will literally pay a lot of money for tools like this because it gives them a massive competitive advantage. But from my perspective, the way to think about it in terms of compliance is it's as a way to empower teams. Because we're illuminating the guideposts very clearly, that empowers teams to be able to navigate better, because without the illumination, they won't be able to do it. It's a very different way of approaching the compliance challenge. So we're not asking teams to kayak slalom in the dark, effectively. I'm not saying it's easy. It's still really hard to do well, but it's a different disposition towards compliance, effectively. So we're reframing it as a way to empower teams with more agency. And finally, I think we need to use active knowledge diffusion to uplift engagement, trust, alignment, and awareness. So we've got clear boundaries for flow, and we've thought about the interactions, just like Mike said. The three styles of working together. What was it? Coordinate, cooperate, collaborate. So in the Teams Bodies book, we've actually only got two. Ours is slightly simplified, which is, as a service and collaboration, but they're quite similar. Anyway, we designed the interactions more. We're more mindful about the interactions. We've put some boundaries in place. We're saying, well, we're just focused on this thing, and that team over there is focused on that thing. So we've got these clear boundaries deliberately. How are we actually creating alignment? How do we learn from each other? How do we understand what good practice looks like, and so on and so on? And from a financial perspective, how can we deduplicate? So we were talking to a bank recently, and they had, I think, 37 different initiatives around AI, all independent, all of which were costing whatever it was, a team costs inside a large bank. And, as soon as the CFO gets wind of that, they're like, what are you doing? Why have you got 37 different initiatives where no one's learning from each other? It's literally financially wasteful. So we've got our diagram again, very, very simplified diagram. There's some unintentional duplication happening across here. There's only 4 in this organization, but in most organizations there's way more than that. We need active knowledge diffusion across the organization to detect it, to create some pull towards effective ways of working, and so on. When I was working at a company in London a while ago, it was relatively small, 150 million revenue. They're looking to expand into new markets, move to the cloud, and insource most of the engineering. So there's a lot of change happening. We realized we needed to stay nimble with empowered teams. We ran a series of internal conferences, starting in technology, but actually they ended up being really, really powerful. And the purpose was to align, inspire, connect, and engage. It was out of that experience that I wrote that book called Internal Tech Conferences. And the CEO at the time, Murray Hennessy, after we'd run about 5 of these, he stood up and said, this initiative around internal conferences has been the single most effective thing to align business and technology that I've seen in this organization. Now, if the organization was doing 150 million revenue a year, we probably saved them somewhere between 5 and 10 million just by running a few internal conferences, because initiatives like the Oracle database migration managed to land properly. Initiatives around moving into the European market managed to land way better, and a whole bunch of other things. So this is genuinely CEO level interest. There's value to add as practitioners. It doesn't need a huge amount of time and space and work, but it can have an outsized impact because it's very focused. It's not just about running an internal conference. It's about how you do it and how you bridge from one part of the organization to the other. That's what you talked about before, what Mike was talking about before. By the way, I did some research recently. Mike and I were actually born in the same hospital, in possibly twins, but I'm joking, right? But we could well be twins. Lots of different things that we can do, and in many organizations, stick your hand up if you're doing some of these kind of things in your organization. So communities of practice, lunch and learn, guilds, public blogs, internal conferences. Most organizations do some aspects of these, but what I've seen certainly, is in many organizations, maybe organizations, these are not really connected through to value in the way that makes sense. Sometimes it's important to not have them too connected to obvious value. Communities of practice in particular, Emily Weber, who I'm privileged to be able to work with on a regular basis, who wrote the book, or one of the main books on communities of practice, cautions against connecting it too closely to like value delivery and so on. And I think that's fair, but there's still a way to think about these things in a way which more clearly connects to value in the sense that it brings about alignment, deduplication, a bunch of other things. So if you're interested in running a conference, go and get a copy of the Internal Tech Conferences book. What we're really talking more generally, though, is active diffusion of knowledge across team boundaries. Imagine there are some incense sticks, some room sticks here, and a big fan behind it, like this. So we're diffusing that smell across the room. There's a key term here that we've been using for a while. We've put the name to it relatively recently, but we've been using the concept for a while, called Innovation and Practices Enabling Team. Enabling Team, with that purple style, comes straight from Teams Body's book, but it's a special type of enabling team focused on innovation and practices. This is a really scary diagram, don't worry about it. There's lots of stuff happening on a timeline along the middle, and this team is looking for interesting stuff. So this little star in the back black blob is an interesting thing. And we go, ooh, that's a really interesting way of doing that data visualization. It's a really interesting way of building context for a chatbot, or it's a really interesting way of who knows what, something else. This group of people in the IPET, Innovation Practice Enabling Team, they know what the future should look like. They know we need to move in this direction. So HR, Renee used to be a COO, brings together multiple different kind of perspectives here. We end up with a loosely coupled learning organization. I've literally had 2 conversations in the last 10 days, one with a CIO at a bank in the Middle East and one with a CTO of a huge German engineering corporation. And they literally both said, I need to turn my organization into a learning organization. AI is forcing me to turn my organization into a learning organization. And like, if it needs AI to do that, okay, fine. It'd be nice if people kind of realize that that's a useful thing without AI, but there we go. So AI is actually making organizations potentially more human if we get it right. I think I don't know, it's a slightly odd situation, but there we are. These leaders are realizing that the organization has to learn. We have to have that learning feedback loop up and down and across the organization. And I think this active knowledge diffusion empowers teams to share, learn, and align. At speed and scale, it's driving innovation and efficiencies. Like we get organizational benefits, but we get human benefits too. We don't get people stuck in little silos and so on and so on. People are recognized for their expertise, contribution, focus on value, and so on and so on. So how do we scale without slowing down? It's empowering teams around smaller things and actively curating sharing. That sounds really easy, right? At one level, it is kind of easy if we internalize the principles. Turns out most organizations are not set up like that at all. So 4 things we looked at today. There's loads more that are needed, but these are 4 nice places to start. Treating teams bodies as the infrastructure for agency, thinking about self-service discipline using those kind of vending machine APIs. Reframing compliance as a way to enhance agency of teams doing work. And then making sure we're actively diffusing knowledge. And there's a literal financial benefit, but there's also kind of organizational and operational innovation benefits that come out of that too. I think we can do this. We're in a great place to do this with our kind of experience from the Agile background, but refocusing it. We've got the opportunity to introduce these practices across the entire organization, across the entire knowledge work part of the organization. So if you want the slides, go there, that's fine. And looking forward to questions. Thank you.